So far, our discussion of communication is focused on the meaning of words. In this video, we'll shift our focus a bit and briefly explore the kinds of things people use language to accomplish. This is a vast topic, and we won't attempt to even mention every dimension of it. In particular, we won't discuss the relationship of language to thinking or reasoning. We'll focus instead on the things people do, both intentionally and otherwise, when they use language to communicate with other people. When we think of using language to accomplish a task, the first kind of task that often comes to mind is to convey and request information about the state of the world that the speaker and the hearer share. This is a reasonable starting point. As we have seen, language is particularly suited to this use in a way that no other communication tool we have really is. As we've noted earlier, however, the kinds of information we convey include not only information about what we perceive the state of the world outside of us to be, but also our opinions of that world. Language permits us to convey these two kinds of information simultaneously. Exchanging information is not, however, the only purpose to which we put language. In fact, even simple questions and statements are often motivated by a desire to influence people within earshot to think or feel or act in a particular way. We began this video series by considering a crying baby attempting to make its wants known and a caretaker trying to understand what those wants might be. This is a pretty familiar scenario the world over, and regardless of what motivates babies to engage in this strategy in the first place, the vast majority of them quickly learn that vocalization prompts response on the part of the larger humans in their immediate vicinity. For most of us, then, one of the first uses we make of language is not to convey information, but to get people to act in certain ways, to do things for us. As we get older, and less cute, we eventually discover that demanding that people do things for us is not always the best strategy. We learn other ways of framing our requests, and we find other ways to motivate people to do what we want them to. Take, for example, this guy trying to get his friends to close the window. He can try variations on commands and requests, and even threats. He can try dropping hints. He can also try introducing reasons that it might be in his friend's best interest to close the window. He might even try appealing to their emotions. Each of these is a ploy to get them to do the same thing. Given that they all have the same goal, is there any reason that he might choose one over the others? There are many aspects to this choice. Our personality and the subculture we are part of both influence what we will say and how we will be perceived. Part of what conditions our choice is our emotional and physical state. If we are tired or angry, we are more likely to be less polite and more demanding. Another important factor is how we perceive our relationship to the person we are talking to. Think for a minute. Which of these statements would you use with people you know well? Which with people you had just met? Which with people who might have power over you? Which with people over whom you have power? In quite nuanced ways, each of these sentences expresses something different about what the speakers think about his or her relationship to the person being addressed. And each carries a slightly different message depending on who is using each sentence and with whom they are using it. For example, if the people involved are siblings, the message understood about the speaker's attitude to the hearer will be different than if they are strangers or employer and employee. The relational calculus is even more complicated if the interchange is being observed by others. For example, parents and spouses are often more likely to use more polite forms of address when speaking to family members in public than they would be at home, while teens may use more demeaning forms of address when surrounded by peers than when in other settings. Why is this the case? Might it be because we know that those around us are constantly evaluating us based on how we interact with others? We often structure our interactions to put us in the best light for the audience we care about most. This phenomenon is highly noticeable during political debates, in which candidates may address each other, but be most intent on gaining the approbation of potential voters who may be watching. We use language not only to indicate what we feel is the state of our relationship with other people, we also use it to initiate change to that state. Compliments and apologies are some of the most obvious ways we do this. This change of state might be from one formal category to another, such as going from friends to fiancés, through proposals and acceptance. But more likely, the change is just a step along the spectrum of friendship and enmity. Even insults may have different possible functions. They may be a sign that a relationship has deteriorated, but may also be seen as an invitation to repair a relationship that was inadvertently damaged. In subgroups of some cultures, insults between friends might even be signs of affection. In addition to influencing how people think and feel about us, we use language to influence how people think and feel about other things and people. Often we do this in the service of the kinds of goals for language we have already mentioned. The goals of getting people to act in a certain way or to shore up our relationship with those people. And while we are doing this, we also influence how people think and feel about themselves. We also use language to create. In every culture, there are stories, poems, and songs that are recognizable artifacts, even though they are constructed of nothing but words. These were all created from human imagination and sometimes passed down, with only slight modification, for generations. Lies are another kind of creation, a description of an alternate reality that never was, created this time to mislead someone rather than to inspire or entertain. We also create new statuses with language. In America, we pass from unmarried to married at the pronouncement of a preacher or justice of the peace, innocent to guilty when the verdict is announced, from in jeopardy to safe when an umpire makes his call. To sum up then, we use language to get others to think, to feel, to do, and to be. And while we're doing that, we're also using language to monitor and adjust our relationships with the people around us. As we use language, we reveal aspects of ourselves as well. The most obvious way that we reveal ourselves is that we tell others what we feel and think. But the words we choose often reveal as much about us as the sentences we form with them. Consider this sentence, for example. For some reading this, it is a simple observation of fact. Others, however, will immediately feel that the sentence reveals a gender bias in the person who said it. For them, this is reflected in the exclusive use of masculine pronouns. Some of these people might prefer the use of feminine pronouns. A speaker who feels comfortable with the original sentence might suspect someone who uses feminine pronouns as having certain political or social leanings. Others might want to use more neutral or inclusive phrasing, but even then, people might infer one thing or another from the order of the pronouns. More and more, people are choosing to use plural nouns and pronouns to avoid conflict. In any case, exactly what people choose to attribute to any of these choices varies from context to context, relationship to relationship, and to appreciate what the choice of these pronouns reveals about the speaker and the people being addressed, the hearer must understand the relationship of the people involved, as well as the cultural changes happening in the period of history when the sentences were produced. In addition to our political and social bent, the words we choose when we express ourselves reveal where we come from and what we have experienced. We are more likely to hear one of these different ways of offering someone a refreshing beverage than we are to hear the others, depending on which part of the U.S. we are in. Someone who uses one of these terms in a region of the country where it is not typically used instantly tells the others around them that they ain't from around here. Someone's choice of words is not the only linguistic clue we use to guess at a person's origins. Word choice combines with pronunciation to produce what we refer to as someone's accent. Accents are some of the most powerful triggers around, and they are all the more powerful because we don't consciously recognize how much influence they have on how we evaluate the people we encounter. We pay more attention to how someone speaks than to what they say, especially in those first few seconds that we hear them talk, when we unconsciously decide whether they should be trusted or feared, pitied or ignored. Our first decision is whether that person's accent marks her or him as someone from around here or from somewhere else. If we think the person is from around here, wherever here may be, we tend to give them less leeway. That is to say, we judge their words and their actions more narrowly, because if they're from around here, they should know the local rules and play by them. We judge them by the content of what they say, more than by the way they say it. If we decide that they're not from around here, we next decide whether they're from some place that we can identify, and if that marks them as safe, as a threat, or in some other way. This is the realm where stereotypes and prejudice have the most influence. Finally, we may decide that they are not from here, and we can't figure out where they do come from. When we meet people in this category, we will most often revert to assessing them on their looks and general demeanor, but immediately start forming an opinion of them that we will then transfer to the next person we meet, who talks the way they do. The third feature of the way we talk that reveals who we are to the people who hear us is what we'll call our delivery. By that I mean whether we speak quickly or slowly, whether our voice is deep or high-pitched, or somewhere in between, whether we speak softly or loudly, timidly or with confidence, whether we are hesitant or fluent, whether we mumble or articulate clearly, whether we express ourselves in a disjointed manner or coherently. Taken together, these three factors, word choice, accent, and delivery, create an impression of who we are and where we come from, and are often more important to the reception our words receive from others than is the content of what we say. In our next video, number 11, we'll take another look at what grammar does and the tools it has available to do it.